It was the kind of moment that on its own might have passed without more than a few nods and chuckles. Rob Lowe, sitting comfortably during a casual segment, speaking with the ease of someone who knows his audience and his town. The conversation drifted to life in Montecito, that picturesque enclave where ocean air meets manicured privacy. And then, almost as an aside, he mused about how a neighborhood changes when certain high-profile names move in. It was the kind of remark you could file under local color, the kind you might hear at a corner cafe, except this one was captured on camera, clipped into a bite-sized segment and sent spinning into the social ether. Within hours, the internet had chosen its own emphasis. Some heard warmth in his tone and honest and lightly amused observation about the ripple effect of celebrity life intersecting with small-town rhythm. Others swore they detected the shadow of a smirk, a calculated pause before the words, "quiet town," that when replayed in slow motion, felt like a wink to an inside joke, one that Meghan and Harry were inevitably cast as the punchline to. Headlines leaned into that reading, framing Lowe's line as a candid jab or pointed truth, and attaching the Sussexes' names to every iteration. Part of what made that clip so combustible was timing. The couple's presence in Montecito has long been a lightning rod, their every move scrutinized, praised, or picked apart depending on which corner of the internet you occupy. Against that backdrop, Lowe's seemingly innocent musing didn't land in a vacuum. It landed in a media environment primed to treat any perceived slight, however oblique, as another entry in the ongoing ledger of public opinion. Yet in the original broadcast, the remark seemed almost throwaway, a bridge between topics rather than a headline unto itself. That's the double bind of unscripted television in the age of endless replay. The moment you speak about a shift in the vibe of a town, and the audience already has a short list of who might be on your mind, you've effectively lit a match. Whether you meant to or not, the fire will find its fuel. And as the clip began its migration from talk show stream to Twitter threads, TikTok breakdowns, and comment section autopsies, one truth became clear: the words themselves were simple, but the space they left between meaning and inference was where the drama took root. Because when Rob Lowe spoke about his neighbors, he didn't need to say their names. The audience was already filling in the blanks. The full exchange, when played without the cuts and captions, was deceptively simple. Rob Lowe spoke about the neighbor effect, how a quiet coastal town shifts when celebrities arrive, bringing a subtle but undeniable change to the rhythm of everyday life. He never named names, never pointed a finger, yet for many viewers, the subtext was impossible to ignore. In Montecito, after all, there are few residents whose arrival has stirred as much global fascination and as much polarization as Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. It didn't take long for that connection to solidify in the public imagination. Social media accounts began reposting the segment, some cropping it down to just the dozen or so seconds in which Lewis smiled and made his remark, others overlaying the clip with photos of the Sussexes, as though to visually confirm the implication. Entertainment blogs ran with the framing, using side-by-side images of Lowe and the couple under headlines that leaned toward provocation, Rob Lowe's subtle call-out, or a neighbor's honest take. The phrasing was careful enough to avoid outright accusation, but suggestive enough to fuel speculation. From there, the narrative accelerated. Twitter threads parsed the tone of Lowe's delivery, debating whether the pause after Quiet Town was a rhetorical beat or an intentional nudge. TikTok creators paired his words with footage of paparazzi chasing celebrity SUVs down Montecito's winding roads, turning a mild observation into an implied cause and effect. Even on Facebook community pages where local pride runs deep, the remark was treated like a referendum on the couple's impact, with some residents chiming in to share their own anecdotes about increased traffic or how the area feels less private since certain high-profile moves. What made the moment all the more combustible was how easily it fit into pre-existing narratives. For critics of Meghan and Harry, it was confirmation a neighbor had, in their view, finally said out loud what others were thinking. For supporters, it was a textbook example of how even neutral comments get spun into subtle digs, especially when the Sussexes are involved. The same dozen words were being weaponized in opposite directions, their meaning less about what Lowe had actually said and more about what listeners wanted them to mean. And yet, as is so often the case, the fuller context of the conversation, the minutes before and after that viral line, suggested a much less pointed story, one that would only come into focus when the complete exchange was heard. When the full segment finally made its way online, uncut, uncaptioned, and without the jump edits that had given the viral clips their punch, the tone shifted. In context, Lowe's remark wasn't a monologue about Meghan and Harry at all, but part of a broader reflection on how celebrity migrations can subtly alter the fabric of any small community, whether in Montecito or Malibu, Aspen, or the Hamptons. He spoke about changes in local businesses and uptick in media interest, and even a certain pride residents feel when their town's name starts appearing in glossy magazines. There was no sudden turn toward gossip, no list of high-profile offenders, no sly grin reserved for a particular royal couple. If anything, the rhythm of the conversation suggested that Lowe was making a sociological observation, rather than delivering a personal critique. But by then, the shorter, sharper version of his words had already taken root in the public consciousness, and the uncut context was received by many as an afterthought, a footnote to a headline they'd already decided was true. It's the trap of modern media cycles. Once an interpretation sticks, even new information is bent to fit the original frame. Supporters of the Sussexes seized on the full version as proof that the story had been overblown, that a benign remark had been weaponized for clicks. Critics, meanwhile, brushed it off as damage control, suggesting that Lowe's diplomacy in the complete interview was a way to soften an opinion he'd already let slip in the viral moment. The same footage could be either exoneration or confirmation, depending entirely on which camp you started in. And yet what this episode revealed more clearly than anything else was not the substance of Lowe's opinion, but the brittleness of the public narrative surrounding Meghan and Harry. The fact that a neighbor could speak in such general terms without naming them and still trigger a multi-day news cycle spoke volumes about how charged their presence in Montecito remains. Still, the real impact wasn't on Rob Lowe. It was on the couple themselves, whose image, whether fairly or not, seemed destined to be refracted through every passing comment, intentional or otherwise. If the uncut interview offered the chance to close the loop and let the story fade, it instead fed directly into the broader, more persistent narrative about Meghan and Harry's uneasy place in the public imagination. The clip, in both its edited and full-length forms, became a litmus test not for what Rob Lowe meant, but for what people already believed about the couple. It was a reminder that in the realm of public perception, context doesn't always correct. It often competes, and sometimes loses, to the allure of the sharper, more suggestive version. For critics, Lowe's words, even in their gentlest reading, validated the idea that the Sussexes have changed the character of Montecito, whether through paparazzi attention shifting social dynamics or simply by being the most discussed residents in town. For supporters, the same remarks underscored a different truth, that their presence is so magnetized in the public discourse that they are implicated even when unnamed, their image shaped as much by implication as by fact. The timing only amplified this divide. Meghan and Harry were in the midst of a delicate image recalibration, balancing charitable projects, media ventures, and the ongoing challenge of existing both inside and outside the royal frame. Against that backdrop, even a passing comment from a neighbor could be pulled into the gravitational field of their brand, becoming another point of contention in an already polarized conversation. And there was a secondary effect, subtler but no less telling. By reigniting the Montecito debate, the moment reminded everyone, residents, fans, critics, of just how much the couple's story has become entwined with the identity of the place itself. No, Montecito isn't just a backdrop, it's now part of the mythology, for better or worse. Which means that every local anecdote, whether about a traffic jam or a charity gala, can be and often is reframed through the Sussex lens. In the end, the real headline wasn't what Rob Lowe had said, but how effortlessly his words could be woven into the ongoing saga, a saga in which Meghan and Harry's image is constantly being rewritten, one unscripted remark at a time. By the close of the week, the frenzy over Rob Lowe's offhand remark had run its predictable course. The initial spark, the viral loop, the context correction, and finally the split screen of opposing takes. Yet what lingered wasn't the line itself, but what it revealed, that Meghan and Harry now live in a kind of perpetual feedback loop, where even the lightest ripple in their vicinity becomes part of a larger wave. In that sense, Lowe's comment wasn't so much an attack or a defense, as it was a mirror reflecting back the public's readiness to project their own narratives onto the couple. In the cooler light of hindsight, the remark could be read as nothing more than a neighbor musing on a town's evolving character. But in the charged climate surrounding the Sussexes, it became something else entirely, a micro-event that plugged seamlessly into a storyline years in the making. And it's here that the paradox emerges. The more they try to steer their image through carefully chosen appearances, projects, and messaging, the more susceptible they are to being defined by moments outside their control, moments as mundane as a passing observation on a talk show. This is the reality of their post-royal existence. Their story is no longer told only through what they say or do, but through what others say about them, whether that's a charity founder, a former colleague, or as in this case, a Hollywood neighbor with a gift for casual charm. It is a dynamic that both sustains their relevance and threatens to keep them tethered to a conversation they may wish to leave behind. For admirers, this latest episode is proof of resilience, a reminder that the Sussexes remain an undeniable force in cultural conversation, capable of drawing attention without lifting a finger. For detractors, it's further evidence that their celebrity is inseparable from the controversies, real or imagined, that seem to follow them. And for the neutral observer, it's a case study in how modern celebrity works less about grand statements, more about the way even throwaway remarks can take on lives of their own. So where do you fall? Are you with hashtag Team Fair comments seeing Lowe's words as an innocent reflection on small town change, or with hash Team Shade convinced they carried a deliberate edge? Either way, the conversation shows no sign of slowing, and the next unscripted moment may already be on its way.